I want to refer to something known as the sales funnel. You might be familiar with it, or maybe this is something you've heard of and haven't really dug into. And what this shows us is the journey of the customer. So from the very top of the funnel there, this is when a consumer first becomes aware of your brand. At the very bottom, that's the conversion. Very often, that's a purchase. And with brand lift, we're concerned with what we call the upper and mid funnel measures, right? Roughly the first half of the consumer journey. So at the top of the funnel, we're concerned with how well your ad resonates with listeners, what they understand and remember. So Sam wants to know, do listeners remember hearing an ad for Choco Plus? Do they associate the brand with the correct product or service category, like healthy chocolate? This is awareness. A little further down the funnel, we sort of get into messaging. Do listeners remember or agree with messages in the ad? Next up is familiarity. That's another way of asking, well, how well do listeners recognize your brand? Then we move into the middle of the funnel. This is where we measure a consumer's sentiment of the brand. This starts with favorability and how a campaign leaves a positive impression with listeners. With consideration, as should be obvious, we gauge if a consumer would consider the brand. This gives you an indication of how persuasive the campaign has been. And finally, we move on to intent, where we're measuring if a consumer says if they're likely to take an action. Would they look up more information about the brand or product? Are they considering purchasing it? Or even would they recommend the product or the service? So taking a step back then, with Brand Lift, we can track how a campaign is moving a consumer from awareness at the top to actually intending to make a purchase right there in the mid funnel. By examining each of these measures, we can see what a campaign is best at and where maybe it needs to improve. After looking at what Brand Lift does measure, it's good to know what it doesn't measure, right? And that's really at the bottom of the funnel. Brand Lift doesn't measure any actions actually taken. This could be online or offline actions like web landings, footfalls, or purchases. Now, don't worry, there are other methodologies for that. That's not what we're talking about today, but it's good to understand that in audio, you can measure the full funnel.